Texas may soon study the medical benefits of psychedelics and other drugs in treating individuals for all sorts of mental health issues, including PTSD for veterans. Now, this measure has already passed in the state legislature in Texas. So that's the good news. But there could be a huge obstacle in the way in regard to Governor Greg Abbott, who hasn't really committed to signing this bill into law. Now, the proposal, called HB 1802, passed both houses in the Lone Star State, which would approve the study of MDMA, ketamine, and magic mushrooms, psilocybin, the active ingredient in magic mushrooms for medical uses, including psilocybin clinical trial treating vets with post-traumatic stress disorder. So to give you more details on this proposed study, it'll evaluate and determine whether alternative therapies are effective in treating the mental health and other medical conditions such as depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, bipolar disorder, chronic pain, and migraines, the text of the bill states. Now, the study will also compare the efficacy of the alternative therapies, this is important, guys, with the efficacy of treatments currently used for the medical health, and other medical conditions. So this is good news, especially when you see it passing the state legislature in a state like Texas. Now, I know that the demographics in Texas are changing. The state is slowly shifting to the left, but it's still pretty much a red state. And to see the lawmakers approve this is a good sign. The question is, will Governor Greg Abbott sign it into law? And remember, we're just having a discussion about studying these drugs. We're not talking about like legalizing them right off the bat. And I think that this kind of medical research is really, really important because I genuinely do think that there are potential medicinal benefits to psychedelic drugs. But I'm curious what you guys think about it. Francesca, you seem to have a pretty strong response to this story when I mentioned it earlier. What are your thoughts?
No, look, I mean, Greg Abbott, I'm not holding my breath, but I do think it's interesting that, all the other bills he's passing are ensuring Texans sort of like an early death. And so now they're gonna have more fun on their way to that early death. I'm not even really being that hyperbolic, okay? We're talking about heartbeat bills. We're talking about allowing handguns to be owned by anyone and everyone.
Without a permit.
Without a permit, not to mention criminalizing protests, not to mention voting rights. Like it is just like he is rolling back progress in that state. And so now it's like, yeah, give a little one for the youngins, like a little fun one. But of course, this is not just about recreation. In fact, this is not recreational use at all. This is about, I do not know what that footage is, you guys.
What you might see when you're on psychedelics.
Exactly. First of all, there was someone cutting mushrooms when Anna was speaking. Like, then there was a
we like to have fun.
That I really wanted.
We like to have fun with our B-roll, okay? We like to think, there we go. Those are not magic mushrooms. Those might be.
Oh, here we go. These are definitely magic.
They look fun. Yes.
Well, I mean, look, I do think that it would be important to have these medicines available to people, especially when it comes to PTSD and addiction and things like chronic pain, migraine, depression, all of those things, especially when the alternatives have often been opioids, right? And overprescription of antidepressants and things like that. These are more natural, they're less synthetic, not in every case. But obviously I do think that look, I'm a big believer in non-Western medicine. And so I think that as long as we have, we can pave the way towards this, I think that's good. I have a lot of concerns about not proper regulation, not proper practicing, and also just open selling. And for example, I have a lot of concerns about throwing marijuana to the free market, which I actually, I know TYT members might not like this. I don't totally agree with, because I actually think that it shouldn't be advertised for in the way that in the way that alcohol and cigarettes are advertised for. There are other models around the world that have They've actually legalized marijuana with regulation that allows for it to not just become another giant industry that people are using, unnecessarily. So I'm excited, but also with some critiques.
Ooh. I mean, I have critiques about how marijuana has been legalized for recreational use. Not that it's been legalized for recreational use, but already we're starting to see a monopolistic climate around these marijuana companies, and I have a problem with that. There's no question. But in terms of adults deciding to use it recreationally, I mean, I speak from experience. I'm kind of in favor. But anyway, Rashad, what do you think?
Yeah, the bill in Texas is a dope ass bill, literally. And the bill itself seeks to study how these psychedelic drugs may be useful to actually help veterans. Great idea. That's called the scientific process. That's how this should work. We have been so anti-progress in this country because we have refused to think outside of the box, especially legislatively. Remember, this bill has significant bipartisan support in Texas. And I would argue this is the biggest bill with bipartisan support in Texas. So we'll see if Abbott actually signs it or not. I think there's pressure that can be applied here. But this is a good thing. You have significant suicide ratios inside of the veteran community. The national average of suicide by veteran or suicide of veterans, 1.5 higher than the national average of suicides, and in some regions is 3 to 5 times higher than the national average. So yeah, there is a problem, there's an issue, and we should utilize whatever tools we have at our disposal to address it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And let me just also add, oftentimes US policy focuses on the band-aids it could provide to some pretty serious problems that we have, these gushing wounds. And when it comes to the mental health of our veterans, that's certainly one of the gushing wounds. And I don't want drugs, whether it's psychedelic drugs or typical traditional pharmaceutical drugs, to be the Band-Aid. I do think that it's important to cut to the core of the issue, the foundation of why that problem exists in the first place, and multiple deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan certainly contributes to that. Endless wars certainly contributes to the mental health conditions that our veterans are dealing with today. The lack of decent health care and mental health care for our veterans, that's an important part of the equation as well. So while I'm absolutely supportive of this medical research, and I think it makes a lot of sense. And by the way, there has already been medical research into the potential medicinal use of psychedelics that appears very promising. I also think that we need to have a more holistic approach to the problem that we're dealing with right now in regard to mental health, whether it's dealing with the mental health of veterans or otherwise. I mean, how difficult is it for average Americans to get mental health care at all, with this broken healthcare system? That's another thing that needs to be addressed.
It's often not covered, and if it is covered, it's incredibly difficult to get an appointment with someone who you might not even like, but I'm a huge believer in therapy. Also, as someone who's done shrooms and MDMA, they're not so bad either. I'm just gonna be real with you. They are not bad. And I will say, if it's gonna apply to veterans, I would like for state legislatures, specifically Republicans, but all politicians, to also take a little bit of psilocybin, because I think they could use it, okay? Remember you're human, get off your giant, there you go, dance like these random aliens, hell yeah, they're dabbing, they're
I like the one on the right-hand side who's just like really feeling himself. Like, look at that guy, just like the slow roll. Like, yes.
Oh my gosh.
I feel like I'm on mushrooms
is there
right now.
pride on Mars? Look at this. This is like. Okay, but seriously, it'll change people's minds. And so, I mean, we've all met someone who you're like, you could really do with just like a hit. You could just a little hit of weed. Just loosen up a little bit. That's how I feel about shrooms too.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.